Why don't you start off by just laying it out and what exactly this cover-up is?
Thanks very much for having me. Well, my colleague Christina Cook and I spoke with about a dozen or 2 dozen agents and obtained some internal documents that showed that what federal agents, not just DEA agents, but other agents who work with the DEA and do drug investigations, what they're doing is they are starting, they're claiming that their investigation starts, say, at step 2. They are withholding step 1 from the investigations. And I should say it's not just NSA intercepts. It's informant information obtained from court-ordered wiretaps in one case and using those for information in a second case. They also have a large database of phone records. Whenever the DEA subpoenas or does a search warrant and gets phone records for someone suspected of involvement in drugs or gang involvement, they put all those numbers into one giant database they call DICE, and they use that information to compare different cases. All of the collection seems perfectly legitimate in terms of being court-ordered. What troubles some critics is the fact that they are hiding that information from drug defendants who face trial. And the problem with that is that these defendants won't know about some potentially exculpatory information that may affect their case and their right to a fair trial.
So explain exactly how this information is being hidden from judges, prosecutors, and sometimes defense attorneys as well.
Sure. Well, just to give an example, through any of these 4 different ways, including the NSA intercepts, the DEA's Special Operations Division will send the information to a DEA agent in the field or a FBI agent or an ICE agent or a state policeman, and they'll give them the information, and then they'll say, look, we understand that there'll be a truck going to a certain park in Texas at a certain time. It's a red truck, and there'll be 2 people involved. And the state trooper or the DEA will find a reason to pull the truck over, say for a broken taillight or for speeding, that sort of thing. And lo and behold, inside the trunk, they'll find a kilo of cocaine. The people who've been arrested will never know that why the police or the DEA pulled them over. They'll think it's just luck. And that's important because if those people try to go to trial, there are pieces of information about how that evidence was obtained and what it shows and what other pieces of it show might affect their trial.
One of the 2 slides Reuters obtained that were used to train agents with the Drug Enforcement Agency instructs them in the use of parallel construction. According to the slide, this is, quote, the use of normal investigative techniques to recreate the information provided by the Special Operations Division, such as subpoena, domestic telephone calls. A second slide instructs agents that such evidence, quote, cannot be revealed or discussed. The slide is titled Special Operations Division Rules. Describe what you uncovered about those rules and this concept of parallel construction, which until now had not been publicly discussed in writing.
Well, what really surprised me was talking to agents, current and former agents, who said, sure, we do that. Half of them said, yeah, I could see how people might have a problem with that. The other half said, look, this is a hard job that we do, and we're going after criminals and drug dealers. The people that got the most offended, I think, were the lawyers, the prosecutors, and the judges and the former judges. One current prosecutor told me that he had a case where, in Florida, where a DEA agent came to him with a case and said that it began with an informant, so they were proceeding with the case. And the prosecutor asked the DEA agent more information. He said, I need to know more about your informant. Turns out, ultimately, that they found out that there was no informant. It was an NSA wiretap, and overseas. And that really upset the prosecutor because he said that it really offended his sense of fair play and honesty. And he said it's just a bad way to start an investigation if you're going to start with a lie.
Well, I think what it plays into, Amy, is that there's been this remarkable lack of oversight of DEA by Congress, by other federal oversight agencies for decades now. I mean, this year marks the 40th anniversary of the DEA, which Nixon created as a merger of police agencies, the drug enforcement agencies back during one of the earlier drug wars. And what you see is an organization with a budget of over $2 billion Reuters, you see an organization getting involved in all sorts of shenanigans, hiring informants who land up to be tied up with murderers, locking up some poor drug, I don't even drug dealer, this low-level offender, and forgetting about him in a prison cell. This case of Daniel Chong, who was left in a prison cell for 5 days and forgotten. But beyond that, you have the agency serving as a propaganda agency with none of its statements being compared or held to any sort of scientific standards. You have an administrator who testifies before Congress and is almost a laughingstock when it comes to talking about drugs. So I think that this report by Reuters and by John Schiffman, I hope it's a sort of wake-up call for people in Congress to say now's the time finally, after really 40 years, to say this agency really needs a close examination.
Ethan, the Drug Enforcement Administration has agreed to pay $4.1 million in a settlement to a San Diego college student who nearly lost his life after being left handcuffed in a cell for more than 4 days without food or water. He ultimately drank his urine as he lay there, yelling out to agents right outside. His name was Daniel Chong. He was arrested for a 420 celebration of marijuana culture. He was never charged with any crime, and ultimately he was released.
Well, I think, that's the case I was mentioning before. Part of it, one could say, oh, this is just an accident, and accidents happen. But of course, accidents like that should never happen when you're talking about a police agency, much less a federal police agency, being allowed to just sort of forget about somebody. And in the end, what happens? The taxpayers bail out the DEA for almost killing somebody for no cause whatsoever. So, each year the DEA goes through its own little, appropriations hearings in Congress. Each year it gets approved, and each year they just sort of get a ride. I think these things are piling up in a way that can no longer be sustained, should no longer be sustained.